we're heading to Banjarmasin, Indonesia. They call it the City of 1,000 Rivers, a place where life and water are totally intertwined. But when that vital relationship faced a massive crisis, a really passionate group of young activists stepped up with a powerful message. A message that somehow got completely lost in the currents.
So to put this crisis into perspective, just look at this number. Yeah, that's over 1 trillion Indonesian rupiah. And no, that's not a tech company's valuation or something. That is the official financial cost of the devastating floods that completely submerged South Kalimantan back in early 2021. The scale of the damage was just almost unimaginable.
And this is what it looked like on the ground. You know, this wasn't just some freak storm. NASA actually linked this disaster, the worst the region had seen in 15 years, to a nasty combination of intense rainfall and massive deforestation. The city's lifeblood, its rivers, they just couldn't handle it. The stakes were incredibly high.
Then, in the middle of all this chaos, the governor of South Kalimantan made this now infamous statement. He basically said, "The water is just passing by." As you can probably guess, this was seen as deeply dismissive. It sparked public outrage and really fueled this feeling that, hey, if the government wasn't going to take this seriously, then the community would have to step up.
And that is exactly what happened. Out of all that frustration, a new group emerged. They called themselves Sahabat Sungai, which translates to Friends of the River. And honestly, they were perfectly positioned to be the heroes of this story.
So who were these guys? Well, Sahabat Sungai, formed in early 2022, was this really dynamic group of young people from all across Banjarmasin. They all shared one crystal-clear vision: to tackle the city's river problems head-on and raise public awareness about why it's so important to preserve this ecosystem. And look, this wasn't just a bunch of passionate kids with good intentions. No, they had a professional, seriously well-thought-out plan. So let's actually break down their strategy.
Their strategy was impressively comprehensive. I mean, check this out. It was a 4-part plan. First, do the research to understand the core issues. Second, figure out how to develop the river's potential, for things like ecotourism. Third, launch some innovative media campaigns. And fourth, build strategic partnerships. This was a serious, multi-pronged effort.
And they really put their plan into action. I mean, they were visible. They organized a peaceful demonstration for World Water Day. They sat down for interviews with the mayor of Banjarmasin. They got their message out on local news and radio. And they even participated in national conferences. On paper, they were doing everything right.
So you'd expect their message to be hitting home, right? You'd think the people living on the front lines of this crisis, right there on the riverbanks, would be hearing them loud and clear. But this is where our story takes a really sharp and unexpected turn.
This is the million-dollar question, isn't it? With this professional strategy and all this public activity, were they actually connecting with the very communities they wanted to help? Well, some researchers went to find out. And what they found was this huge disconnect. It was like two different worlds. On one side, you have the activist world of media campaigns, strategic plans, and digital outreach. And on the other, you have the daily reality for the riverside residents: constant flooding, garbage floating by, and their own homegrown cleanup efforts. Two worlds, both focused on the same problem, but somehow not connecting at all.
Okay, the first finding from the field research was just a shocker. In a community known as Two Faces Village, located right on the Jaroju River, residents were asked if they knew about the Sahabat Sungai community. Their response? They had never heard of them, not even once. And get this, it's not like this community was just sitting around waiting to be saved. No way. They were already taking action themselves. They were organizing cleanups, rebuilding their homes to be more flood resilient, and even working directly with the government on a local improvement program called Kotaku. They had the exact same goals as the activists, but were on a completely separate track.
All right, you might be thinking, but what about a place where Sahabat Sungai was directly active? Well, the researchers went to the Miai River area, a place where the group had actually held social events. The result was just as surprising. The local residents couldn't recall their name.
Yeah, the residents remembered that groups had come to help. They recalled seeing a bicycle community, some youth, and other mass organizations. But the specific identity of Sahabat Sungai, despite all their efforts, just hadn't stuck. Their signal was completely lost in the noise of all these other well-intentioned groups doing similar short-term work.
So why? Why did this happen? How could such a passionate, well-organized group just fail to make a lasting impression on the very people they wanted to reach? The research points to a few key challenges here.
Okay, so let's break down these communication gaps. First, their media campaigns weren't really targeted enough to reach people living right on the water. At the same time, so many other groups were active that it was really hard to stand out. Plus, the sheer scale of Banjarmasin's riverbanks just makes comprehensive outreach a massive challenge. And finally, their activities weren't sustained. One-off events just aren't enough to build the kind of trust and recognition you need for a lasting connection.
Now, it's really easy to look at this whole story and just call it a failure. But that totally misses the point. The real story here isn't about one group's shortcomings. It's a powerful lesson in just how incredibly difficult it is to do grassroots organizing effectively. It shows that passion and a great plan are absolutely crucial, but sometimes they still aren't enough to bridge that gap between your intention and your real-world impact.
And that leaves us with this huge question, one that applies far beyond the riverbanks of Banjarmasin. For any project we start, for any cause that we really believe in, how do we move past just broadcasting our message out into the world and instead build a genuine, sustained connection with the people we're actually hoping to reach? That, right there, is the real challenge.